It's great to have everyone joining us for our webinar entitled Sparx Systems Architecture Platform. As you can see from the graphic on screen, tonight we're going to be talking about Enterprise Architect, which is our world-class modeling environment, and the ProCloud server for sharing those models to people around the world, and Prolaborate, the collaboration tool suite in one unified architecture platform. My name is Scott Hebbard. I'm the Communications Manager here at Sparx Systems, and I'm joined by Nizam Mohammed, who's our Sparx Systems Architecture Consultant. He is a evangelic. He is a specialist with Prolaborate and has years of experience working with the Sparx Systems suite of products, and he has worked with customers all around the world in helping to deliver solutions, and so we're very pleased to have his expertise here tonight. And the agenda for the session, talk about how to submit questions. Then I'm going to hand over to Nizam, that's going to show some slides and talk about the Sparx Systems Architecture Platform, and we'll have a discussion. And at the end, we'll hand over for a Q&A session where we'll hear from our audience. So just talking about how to ask questions, please note that audio is muted for all participants. You will be able to type questions to the host, so that'll come through to myself. And if we can't answer all questions live, we'll follow up offline. And we'll try to make the webinar available on YouTube within the next 24 hours. And we'll also have the video posted on the Sparx Systems website under the webinars banner. So look forward to seeing that. On the go-to session, you'll see a window such as one shown on screen. Simply enter your text into the question box, hit send or hit enter on the numeric keypad. That'll come through to me, and we'll be able to ask those questions at the end of the session. So keep them coming through. But right now, I'd like to hand over to Nizam, who's going to present tonight on our topic, which is the Sparx Systems Architecture Platform. So welcome, Nizam, and I can see the blue screens up, and I can see Enterprise Architect, ProCloud Server, and Prolaborate on screen. So looking great. Thanks, Nizam.
Thanks, Scott. Hello, everyone. This is Nizam. Thanks for joining this session. So as Scott mentioned, we'll be talking about the Sparx Systems Architecture Platform in this session. So this is a follow-up from a previous webinar I gave we had in July, where I was talking about Prolaborate and an overview of Prolaborate. And I mentioned about the Enterprise Architecture Platform, and there were quite a few queries that came our way to kind of delve into a little more details on this. And so this is a follow-up to explain how the Enterprise Architect toolset has now evolved into a holistic platform, and what are the components in it, and what are the things that we need to take into consideration while working on something like this. So with that said, a little bit of intro about myself. So I'm Nizam, and I've been doing the Sparx Enterprise Architect related training and consultation and support for the last 15 years or so. And I worked with a variety of customers across multiple geographical locations. And so what I'm trying to say, or what I'll be trying to incorporate in the presentation here, is the experience that we have gathered by working with different implementations and the different challenges we have faced, and how the new product suite or the holistic platform kind of addresses them. So that's the gist of it. And with that said, I would like to just go through the agenda for today. So we'll be taking a closer look at what we mean by the Sparx Enterprise Architecture Platform, as opposed to just a thick client tool that we are all familiar with. And then what are the different components in the EA platform and how they kind of interoperate between themselves, and what would it take to deploy something like this in your environment. And then we'll be also looking at various cloud offerings that this platform has now made possible, and how you can get the entire infrastructure hosted and managed by experts, so that you can just get away from the infrastructure overheads. And just as an additional note, we've been seeing this becoming really, really popular in the last couple of months, I would say, especially during these pandemic times, because that kind of highlighted the key benefits of having the infrastructure hosted in something that's more available and more robust than having it in an internal network. And the security policies and everything is also being taken into account. So we'll be taking a closer look at that. Then we'll be looking at the integrations that this platform enables. So why is integrations important to understand? So we have all been, we're all familiar with the concept of single source of truth. But when we really mean single source of truth, we are not talking about a single tool which contains all data. That has been a concept in the past, but we all know that things have moved from there, and there are a variety of tools for different purposes. And what these integrations now allow us to do is to consolidate the information from multiple tools and create a holistic report or a holistic view out of those consolidated information. So we'll be looking at how this platform supports integrations. And then as a last thing, I just want to share my experience on how or what are the best practices or the key things that you need to consider to roll out an enterprise architecture practice in your organization. It could be something like a greenfield implementation, or it could be something that you are using EA already, but there are avenues for standardizing it and improving it. So we'll be looking at this in a closer detail. So to start with, a quick intro to the different products in this mix. So firstly, it's the enterprise architect, the comprehensive modeling environment that we are all familiar with, and the one that is still predominantly used to create models by close to about 1 million users across the world. But then these are the new additions in the last couple of years, where we have the Pro Cloud Server, which is a web service that enables a seamless and then secure connection to the underlying repository through HTTPS connections. So through secure web-based or web protocol-based connections. And more than that, it also opens up the REST API, which allows us to integrate the data in your enterprise architect models with external tools. And the external tools could be the likes of ServiceNow or your CRM systems or your Jiras and Doors and various other things. So that kind of eliminates a lot of overheads in bridging data between multiple tool sets. So that's something that we'll be looking at. And then comes Prolaborate, which is the web-based or the web front end for enterprise architect, mainly targeting the non-EA users. So the Prolaborate is a platform or the tool that intends to utilize the information that we model in EA and present it to the right audience. So, it's always been a disconnect in the past, and we have been witnessing that over years. And it's all that accumulated experience that we have included to come up with a web frontend that simplifies, curates, and lets people collaborate on the EA data. So these are three tools that we are looking at when we talk about a Sparx Systems suite. And how this all fits together. So the platform in a nutshell is, it started with Enterprise Architect, the thick client, which has been there for the last 2 decades, and it's still the preferred tool of choice for, as I said, like close to about 1 million users in the world. But then with the advent of the Pro Cloud Server APIs, now the information that we model in Enterprise Architect, it could be systems engineering data, it could be enterprise architecture data, it could be processes, it could be anything. That data is now more transparent and seamlessly integrated with the rest of the tools in your enterprise tools landscape. So that is the key difference with the advent of this RESTful API. And with almost every modern tool now supporting REST API, integrating information between multiple tools has just become so seamless. And that's something that we'll be taking a quick dig at. And then the Prolaborate platform kind of encapsulates this model information. like again, this is a follow-up from the previous webinar. So to dig deeper into Prolaborate, there is a video of the previous webinar which talks about the core use cases that Prolaborate addresses and how that enables us to go from a team of 10 modelers or architects to a team of 100 users who really would like to consume and make use of the modeling information. So that is a separate webinar which is available for you in the resource library. But then what I want to move to now is, with this APIs and with all this curation in place, now we have a very good way to connect to the tools like Jira's and Doors and ServiceNows and Confluence and your Salesforces or your Clarities or any other tools in your ecosystem that you think would be useful for the enterprise architecture data to be looking to in real-time basis. So that integration has completely redefined the way we see models. So people who are more used to the Visio kind of diagrams, it's a big paradigm shift to understand how various systems can be interconnected, but still your overarching view is still consistent and is aligning to your strategy or your goals or your project requirements. So that is what has been enabled with this platform's integration with the wider tools. And lastly, with all this in place, where we have an ability to connect to external database through a secure HTTPS connection, and then you have that kind of enabled hosting and managing your platform on secure cloud environments so easy. You can also have it in-house, but this APIs and the services that has been introduced in the last couple of years have now enabled us to offer a complete SaaS platform, which has all the infrastructure required to set up and run enterprise architecture practice, hosted and managed by a team of experts. So that's something that gives a full picture of what the enterprise architecture platform stands as is. So with that said, that's a quick overview of the platform. What I would like to really move is to the components in the EA platform and how it was previously and how it has evolved in the recent past. So as we all know, in the past, or for a many users, even today, this is how Enterprise Architect is seen. So Enterprise Architect, the client, is connecting to the databases, underlying databases, through a ODBC or a OLEDB connections. So this is great for a small team if it is all going to be comprised within the same network and there is not going to be any latency and things like that. And then we had a set of APIs, the COM APIs that are exposed at the enterprise architect level, which was very comprehensive. There is nothing that I'm trying to underplay here. It's very comprehensive. You can literally automate any task that you intend to do in EA through these APIs, be it documentation, be it backups, be it XML generation, be it merge. Anything that you intend to do on an automated basis, these APIs were really powerful, and we were able to develop model add-ins that interacted through these APIs to automate our tasks. But then this was the platform as we know in the past. And what we are seeing now is, with the advent of ProCloud Server, we are now able to connect to these databases immaterial, or doesn't matter where that database server resides, you have a really faster and much more efficient way to connect to your databases, and that too through your secure HTTPS connectivity. So to open up an OLEDB or an ODBC through to a remote machine has always been a big challenge, and it requires several firewalls considerations to be taken, etc. But an HTTPS, where a very secure certificate is in place and all communications are encrypted, it made the things setting it up in a remote location much more easier. And with that comes also the REST API. So ProCloud Server enables the RESTful API, which then changes the face of this tool, and we are now able to have the data that we modeled, the diagrams that we created, the tag values that we created in EA, now driving dynamic dashboards and curated reports and reviews and collaborations and everything that is required for a non-tech user to participate and share feedback is now possible because of exposing the data through some REST API, and that's where Prolaborate comes in. And that has really opened up the model information to a variety of stakeholders. But then this whole platform, the ProCloud Server REST API and the Prolaborate, is also enabling us to integrate with the external tools. So integration in the past has always been shoveling data from one tool to another. So you copy data, you load and shift it to another tool, and then you try to synchronize it on a regular basis. Whilst you can still do that, but these integrations are a bit more than that. You can have a virtual link to an external element or an external artifact, and that can get automatically synchronized, and you can have a pull or a push request to move data between these two tools. So that's where the key difference is with the advent of these REST APIs. And this is the entire platform as it stands. And in order to set it up, so excuse me, I'm going to take a closer look at a slightly technical diagram here, but this is important to understand if anyone is considering to deploy this in your network, or even if you're considering to host it in a cloud environment. And what we are looking at here is we need a database server in which all the repositories are hosted, managed. When I say managed, we are talking about real-time backups, all 99.9 kind of percentage availability. It's anytime it goes down, you have an ability to restore to a previous version. So everything taken care. That's ideally what Amazon RDS would do, for example. And then we have the application server, which could be any machine where you have a compute capability, and you could host all your softwares like ProCloud Server service and the Prolaborate application in it. And then these two will enable the connections between the applications and the databases. And then as an additional thing, you can integrate to the supporting applications. So when I say supporting applications, we're talking about the things like single sign-ons, email notifications, and even if it's a federated authentication system, you can connect to that as well. So that would be the third step in your setup. And the fourth step will be to do the right thing to integrate it with Confluences or Jiras or ServiceNows and do the right configuration so that your data in Prolaborate and EA are seamlessly interchanged with these tools. And once it's all done, the easiest part is to configure or to let the user start with it. For a user's perspective, all the complexity in the underlying infrastructure is hidden from them, and all they need is a HTTPS connection to some IP address and a port number. And as long as the firewalls are configured to access that particular port, the user wouldn't even know the complexity in the underlying infrastructure. But I just thought I'll give a closer look at what kind of infrastructure is required here. And add to this, there are firewalls, there are safe backups, there's securities, there is all the other considerations that we need to take into account as well to do this. So that's a quick gist of what are the components in the EA platform and how they all fit together. And with that said, I would like to quickly move to what are the options available for you. So as I said, the first option is to go and set all this infrastructure in your own environment. That is still a way that most large organizations follow. But again, reiterating, with the last couple of months, we are seeing a big paradigm shift in the way people are approaching this problem. So, they understand remote work has become a norm, and then they also understand, maintaining an infrastructure in a closed office is going to be really, really difficult. So the cloud options, which is satisfying all their performance needs, all their security needs, are becoming more and more popular these days. And what are the options available for us? So the options available is you have all the softwares and the databases hosted and managed in secure AWS or Azure cloud platforms. And from a user's perspective, all they need is the enterprise architect application installed. And even the license management is done from the hosted and the managed platform. So the licensing server will also be residing in the cloud. So all you need is zero configuration, install EA and start working. And then for the collaborators or the wider users, all they need is a browser. But with the recent advancements like app streams and the Citrix Zen apps and things like that coming into picture and making it even more, opening up a lot more possibilities to even stream your applications from a cloud environment, we are now able to achieve a complete, what we call a complete SaaS platform. The previous one, I would still call it as a platform hosted in cloud, but this is something that kind of relieves the users from any install at all. It's like a zero install, so you don't have to go through installing any software, installing the updates, or even taking the overheads of installing it in Mac or any other OSs. So all you need is a browser, and from the browser you'll be able to open Enterprise Architect, do the modeling, open Prolaborate, open the integrations managers or whatever, and do everything through your browsers. So that has been the key advancement in the last couple of years, and thanks to all the technological improvements that is happening in parallel as well. And with all that, what we are able to do now is to just go to the users and say, if just tell us what your specifications are, and we take care of managing, configuring, setting it up, and making it available for you 24/7. And all you need to do is just start with EA and do your models, or start with your reviews and collaborations and set up a practice. So with that said, I would like to give a quick like a sample of what will be a user experience to use EA from a browser. So I'm just going to start with a Mac user, Mac users experience. That's a pain point that we have always come across. All they need is an email or a link that is shared to them, and just on a click of a button, they get taken to their app stream or the EA that is streamed through cloud, and just on a click, they'll be taken, or the Enterprise Architect application opens up in their browsers, a Safari or a Chrome or whatever, but it's only till then that they will realize they are accessing it through a browser. Right after that, it's the actual application that is in front of them, and they could do their normal modeling exercise here. We have also got another video which compares the performance of a remotely hosted environment accessed through a local Enterprise Architect installation versus the cloud setup or the stream setup. And we have seen that the performance in this is much faster. And the reason being, this is also hosted and managed from the same location where your databases and other applications are installed as well. And what you could see is, once you switch to a full screen mode, you would not even notice that it's a browser streamed app, and you could see the performance. I've just shown this to show, highlight that the performance of opening a diagram or changing something in the diagram is just as seamless as it will be if you're working in a local environment. So that is something that I wanted to highlight. And with this SaaS platform, and with a lot of like the R&D that's happening, what we have also achieved is, instead of asking or letting people to start from scratch and do the modeling from scratch, we have now found or introduced a way to just let them start with a curated view, also called, like in Prolaborate, the dashboards. And then if they are looking at a diagram in Prolaborate or in the web front end, and they see a need to make some change. For example, there's a comment from a reviewer which says something needs to be changed. Just by clicking the edit diagram from your web application, Prolaborate, you are now taken to Enterprise Architect, again in the same browser. But it's not just opening Enterprise Architect. What is happening here is it opens EA with the minimalistic interface, and then it opens the diagram that was in context and lets the user do the changes that they want. So this kind of, it's like having an editor on your web itself. So it's like integrating these two platforms so seamlessly. This is something that I would say as one of the most recent advancements, but people are so fascinated or excited about this because you don't have to go back looking for the same item in a thick client and then try to change it and then come back and see how it has been reflected. So it's all happening in a click of a button, and that's a big performance, or it's a efficient way to do it. And all they need to do is, once they make all the changes in Enterprise Architect, they just have to go save it when no additional steps required, just save the diagram. You have added all the description and comments, save the diagram, go back to Prolaborate, and in the next second, you'll see the diagram updated in Prolaborate as well. And that finishes the full review loop. So you have a non-EA user giving a feedback. The modeler goes from the feedback to EA, makes the changes and comes back, and it's all done. So people who are already using this, like the tool for engaging the non-tech users, you might already get an appreciation of how this kind of simplifies the efforts involved in engaging them and making or requesting them to do the right changes. So that seamless experience, I've got the videos, I'm using the videos in this presentation, and I've got the links to these videos shared towards the end, and it will be also shared in the videos and emails. So you can take a closer look at it if that's of some interest to you. So those are the cloud options, and we have a variety of settings that you can configure, because we have done the setup for healthcare, financial institutions, manufacturing, automobiles, quite a number of organizations, and each of them have some security compliance and standards. And the cloud world is really quickly catching up with all these security standards, and we have all the compliance that is expected in the AWS or the Azure platforms as well. So that's something that we wanted to highlight. And it's because of the Pro Cloud Server and the whole platform that this was enabled. This has become a possibility. And with that said, moving to the last aspect of the platform, I would like to talk about integrations. So the platform as it stands, in the past, we have been using the COM APIs to connect to your, to extend your EA functionality through model add-ins. However, with the advent of Pro Cloud Server, REST API, and the Prolaborate combination, we are now able to look and integrate with any tools that has a RESTful API support. So these are out of the box available through from the product, but then there are also a range of options available for us to customize it or extend it based on your use cases. And I'm already aware of quite a number of service firms across the world Sparx services who are extending this REST API to implement customer-specific integration use cases. So it's not just what is out of the box, it also opens up a range of opportunities for us to extend it and make it even more personalized for the actual team's expectations. So out of the box integrations, these are just to name a few. It's not an exhaustive list, but these are some of the very common tools that we are seeing people, kind of asking us repeatedly. And as these screenshots show, we can choose what we want to map the external data as, and then you also have an option to pull or push external items one by one, or you could do a whole synchronize of the entire directory. So it kind of looks at the latest changes and synchronizes it back into your model. And what is the real benefit of doing this? I've just taken a small example to show you that this is an application, which is a configuration item from my ServiceNow project. And I have imported that into EA using the Pro Cloud Server API. And then what I've done is that is now fit into my enterprise architecture model. So I've got the capabilities, I've got the projects, I've got the data layer, I've got the technology stack, I've got the processes, and I've got this application which is coming from ServiceNow. And as and when this application or the configuration item is updated, the details gets updated in the EA models as well. So EA now becomes a store of this information rather than a master. But what is the benefit we are getting? We could do this seamless connectivity, the end-to-end traceability. And even if you want to present this traceability to a stakeholder, you could use the Prolaborate view. So the diagrammer view in Prolaborate is meant to take this kind of a complex information and provide a viewport for your less technical users to do an impact analysis, to do a what-if analysis. So if I just click on a link, I'll be able to open this diagram in the Prolaborate diagrammer. And what you see here is that information that I have modeled in EA, where the PMO process as ServiceNow application is connected to various artifacts in my enterprise architecture model. So let me just quickly toggle between the icons just to show that these are capabilities, these are events, or sorry, the data nodes, and these are processes, and there are technology stack and projects or work packages in here. And this gives a very good platform or a very good utility for anyone who is even less tech savvy to do a due diligence. So even if they don't want to look at these icons, which some feel a bit technical, they could look at it in proper color-coded legends and understand what these are. They could enable, they could disable, they could configure it. So they could do, they could play with this information and do the due diligence. And that's what we are really looking for when we talk about importing a data into EA. If it's only a configuration item with its details, or if it's only a change item from Jira with its details, that's not really the full story. When it comes to EA, what we are looking at is how it fits into the bigger architecture or the bigger model, and how that could also be seamlessly used to do this waterfall analysis. And that's where the key difference is. And there are a variety of other integrations available as well. And one of the most popular ones is to integrate the EA data with the digital knowledge management tools such as Confluence and SharePoint. So one of the things that has happened in the past is we have seen users copying and pasting images into Confluence pages, which is kind of defeating the purpose of real-time digital documentation. Rather, what we need is all the EA diagrams to be published in Confluence and to be updated on a real-time basis. And how is it made possible now? We have a Prolaborate macro that is available from the Atlassian marketplace, and that will allow us to integrate a diagram live from EA into Confluence. So you could see that I changed a diagram in EA, and in the next second, it gets reflected in the Confluence. And how am I doing it? I'm using this macro to browse through the model information and choosing the diagram that I would like to publish in a Confluence page. And with the next click, you're now able to see the diagram and all its contents published in Confluence. So what used to be a manual activity is all automated and real time now. And it's not just publishing, you can even interact with it. And if you want to go to the next step, just on a click of a button, you get transferred to Prolaborate. And then you can even edit it if you have the right permissions. So it's not just a diagram. And gone are the days where we just had diagrams copied and pasted in multiple pages. So that's kind of defeating the purpose of digital documentation. And it's all made possible because the EA data is now open and available through this APIs and through these integrations. Similarly, you can have an integration with Jira, you can have an integration with Azure DevOps or Doors. So any tool of your choice, you'll be able to integrate. And what this integration will allow you to do is not just import your data from your external tools, but rather link them in a dynamic way. So, if you don't want to have a master and a store, you could just connect your, for example, an EA use case to a Azure DevOps item. And here is the connection where I've got EA's use case connected to a DevOps requirement. And then if I want to understand the user story in DevOps a little more detailed, on a click of a button, I get taken to the DevOps environment itself. And from the DevOps, I'll be able to switch back to Prolaborate and navigate back to the model where I was working. So it's like a two-way integration, but without shoveling any data across these platforms. So this is also possible. So it's just for you to decide which kind of integration is suitable. You could have the data level integration or just the virtual link, and both are enabled with this platform. So that's sort of a gist on how integrations work, and this is just a start. So if there are any other tools that you're contemplating, we are aware of a number of service companies who are assisting our clients to kind of implement these custom integrations to solve key business problems. For example, Salesforce and CRM, if connected with the EA, you'll be able to do a lot of analysis based on those two details combined. And we are also working on something where we could take all this data and publish it into even more powerful reporting tools such as Power BI or Tableau. That's something that I don't have an example now, but there's been a lot of requests coming our way, and we are working on that to establish such integrations as well. So that's to do with the integrations. And as a last step, I would just like to share, the experience that we have accumulated over years on what are the steps that we think is good to practice to set up not just a platform, but the whole enterprise architecture practice. So EA being a really, really useful and an easy tool to start with, it's really great where people could just download, install it in their machine, and get started with the modeling. That's the key, USP of EA. But then it also becomes a bit of a challenge when you want to have a larger team doing the same. When you have a larger team doing the same, just downloading and start creating diagrams in it, you would end up with some really fancy diagrams. But what you would really miss is that single source of truth, or a consolidated view, or a consistent standardized approach to modeling, which is highly important to drive your traceability or your impact analysis or your documentation or your reporting. All these are heavily relying on how standardized your model is. So the steps that we see when we go to either implement something from scratch, or even if we are going into an existing team where they have an existing EA practice for a couple of years, but the models are sort of not aligned with each other, what we really do is we just take a step back. We'll not do the modeling yet, but we'll take a step back, try to understand what they really need, and try to define a meta model accordingly. I can't emphasize more on the importance of meta model, because if this one step is done right, we have seen the EA practice to be phenomenally successful. And if this is not done right, we have also seen it to fail miserably, and people reverting back to the conventional, all the PowerPoints and Visio ways as well. And why is this so very important? EA is really strong, and it supports a variety of frameworks, the TOGAFs and Archimates and BPMNs, and you name it, there'll be support for it in EA. But then if you just open it up to the users and ask them to do their models using these frameworks, we have to assume that they are all very proficient with these frameworks and they know what they're doing, which is unfortunately not the case. So what we really need to do is, let's say we are going to implement something based on TOGAF ADM and using the Archimate notations, which is a very standard approach these days. Our first step that we recommend is establish that simple meta model that you want to model. So what do you want to see in the business layer? What do you want to see in the application layer? What is that you want to see in the information and technology layers? And how are they all interconnected? So if you can clearly establish there is only one way to connect two artifacts, which is the biggest problem we are seeing. So if you take Archimate and try to connect two artifacts, there'll be at least 5 different types of connections that Archimate shows you. I mean, the Archimate standard prescribes, and it's up to the users to choose what is right. But that is a good and a bad thing. So if the users differ and they start using what they think is right, you won't be able to have a consolidated report. So if you want to say, I would like to understand all the applications that supports a particular business service, you need to write a single report, or you need to generate a single report which fetches all the applications in a very specific way. But if you don't have a consistent modeling approach, you are highly likely to either miss it or get a lot of noise. So that step has always been the blocker to take EA to the next level. So we recommend Metamodel definition as a key step, and that is coming from the understanding what you really want. And even if it is to scrap, I'm sorry to use the word scrap, but that's literally what we have done in quite a lot of implementations. We have to configure EA and do a model migration. Model migration is either getting it from your Visios or external tools into EA based on this meta model, or take your existing EA models and clean it according to this meta model. And in that process, we have unfortunately scrapped a lot of models that has been done in the last couple of years, but it's for a better maintainability. So that's something that I wanted to establish. And once this is done, everything else just falls in place. once you have a proper Metamodel done and the configuration done. So when I say configuration, I'm talking about your toolboxes, your model validations, your governance, your documentation templates, etc. And if that is set up right, what you really see is the learning curve will be significantly reduced. You can really onboard a wider team fairly easily, and you will have a very focused and simpler user interface, and you can standardize it and scale up. So tomorrow, if you want to add more to this business layer, no problems, you can just add them. So that's what you, or when I say you, I'm talking about the team that takes the lead to set up an EA practice, should be aware of that. You should start with a meta model and then do the configuration and then do the model migration. So when I talk about model migration, I'm talking about harvesting different sources of information and align it with the meta models. And in that process, this platform that we talked about, like EA, Prolaborate, and ProCloud servers, will allow us to have this continuous feedback cycle incorporated in this process. So if you do this in isolation and come one day with a whole bunch of documents and send it to the people to review, you and I know that's not going to happen. But rather, if you have a collaborative way to let them share their feedback as and when this model is being created, that makes a big difference. So that's the recommended approach from our side. And what we get out of this is, I would usually call this like enterprise architecture baseline repository out of the box. So a lot of architecture implementations go halfway, lose steam, and fail because we are asking the architects to go back and do whatever they have already done in another way. And that amidst all their other work commitments is almost impossible. So what we need to do is to have some dedicated resources in your team who can work on migrating your or cleaning up your existing contents and creating this architecture baseline repository out of box sort of a concept. Or there are a number of support organizations, service organizations across the world who, from Sparx services or other partners who can help you do that. But if you do that, then that becomes a really good baseline for your wider team to start and then also maintain it. And without maintaining, the whole enterprise architecture effort would go for a toss in a very short span of time. So it's all about having the right training in place and having the right governance in place based on this meta model. So this is just a bit of experience that we have seen what has been working in the last several years. And this is not just myself. We've worked with so many consultants in multiple parts of the world, and we have seen this sort of an approach is what has given a very pragmatic way to succeed in an enterprise architecture practice. So that's pretty much what I wanted to share. And these are some of the links that I used in my presentation to show these videos. I'll make these links available for you even after the presentation. You can always look at it if you think some of these are really useful. And one thing that I didn't show is this EA on a browser versus EA on a local computer. I would suggest if you are having any performance issues or complications in looking at or setting up EA on a remote environment, kindly have a look at this to see how different the performance is. So I think that's pretty much what I wanted to share. And if you need any further information on going from where you are and understanding what this platform can really do, if you want a personalized demo, or if you want to take up a 30-day cloud trial or set up a proof of concept, please feel free to drop us a note at prolaborate@sparxsystems.com, and our team will be more than happy to connect with you and assist further. So that's pretty much.
Thank you very much, Nizam. So I've got a couple of questions. So the first question is, you talked about two-way integration with Azure DevOps. And so there's a question about what other tools have been currently integrated with the Sparx systems architecture platform.
Yeah, so that's a very good question. And as I was adding that caveat, I was trying to be very clear that I've just taken a few examples because these are some of the commonly used ones, but the list is quite large. The ProCloud server pages show the kind of integrations that are available out of the box. But if there is any tool that you are you're using currently and you think there is a need for integration, the REST API from EA makes it so easy to integrate, and all we need is a mechanism to lift and shift data from one to another, or to integrate in a virtual format. And you have the APIs and documentations for that as well. But most common tools, be it even apart from this, the Clarities and Salesforces and various other tools are also out of the box. And again, out of the box is a good start, but you can further customize it. So I wouldn't say it's there, just go and use it, but I would say there's a lot of it already available out of the box, and that should give a really good head start.
Thanks, Nizam. So the next question is from Wolfgang, and you demonstrated Enterprise Architect in the browser. And so Wolfgang had a question saying, will it be possible to model architectures within the web browser using drag and drop, like you do with Enterprise Architect as a thick client? So.
Okay, so the good question, it's a great question. So I showed two examples. So let me just tell the difference between these two. So in the first example, what I showed was I'm literally opening Enterprise Architect in my browser with the project browsers and everything open. So it's like a exact experience that you get if you install it in EA. But then the second example I showed, where I spoke about integrating or going from a web browser or a web tool like Prolaborate to EA, is if I want to make a change in this diagram, all I need to do is to say click edit, and it will take me from here to EA. But it's not opening up any minimal, it's not opening up a reduced functionality EA. All it's doing is it's taking that additional efforts to minimize the interface. I think the question was here, can I drag and drop? Yes, this is a normal Enterprise Architect application loaded here. But this is meant for people who are not really familiar with all the project browsers and traceability windows and relationship windows and properties and tag values and things like that. If you are an EA user, you have the entire EA available for you. So you could just even switch the workspace. You get your normal Enterprise Architect workspaces enabled, and you could do your drags and drops and whatever you do in EA. So this is nothing it's not a reduced version of EA. It's still EA, but purposely minimalistic for making the user, just letting the users focus on exactly what they would intend to do.
Fantastic, thanks, Nizam. There's another question that says, can you assist customers to create a meta model to suit their individual needs if they don't necessarily have the experience? So you talked about in the service area about creating a meta model. So if they don't know how to get started, can you help them with that process?
Absolutely, and that's exactly what that's pretty much what we do day in, day out. So we and all the service firms, we are ready to assist in any of these steps. But the most critical step, or the most commonly assisted items, are these three phases. So requirements, understanding what they really want, defining this meta model, and then defining configuring EA with the toolboxes and validation rules and governance, so that they could just go ahead and do the modeling. And this is pretty much our strength, and we have we've been assisting firms with this over years repeatedly. Yes, for sure.
And you can't really talk about the customers themselves, but what are some of the successes that you see by undertaking this approach, Nizam?
Okay, so whilst I can't name the customers explicitly, but there are quite a few videos that the customers themselves spoke. In the recent, there was an EA Global Summit that happened a couple of weeks, I think a month ago, and there were a number of customer case studies. And there is also at least 3 or 4 with whom I have personally worked with, and they have spoken out themselves saying how this has really helped them set up a practice. And what we are really seeing is, I'm as much as I'm an EA consultant, I've been working with EA for 15 years now. But the first impression when a new novice user opens EA is, God, this is a lot of information. There is so much in it. And that's the strength of EA, but if a novice user just looks at it, he may feel or he may find hard to start. There are plenty of resources available and guidance available, but still, if you could reduce that learning curve for them, it makes a huge difference. And one of the large banks that I worked with in Australia, when we started, there was already 8 to 9 years of EA practice there. And the person who was maintaining it was a EA guru. I wouldn't say anything less than that. But then when he was about to move, that's when the problems kicked in. And the way the things were set up there was quite hard for anyone else to really grasp. So when we started the journey with the complete platform team, we were able to simplify it. And this is what I said, I have to scrap a lot of information that was there. But for the betterment of this practice, we have to scrap it. But we established this practice with the simple meta model. We integrated with several other tools in that bank. So it's a large bank, an acquisition of a number of other banks. So there was quite a complex system, but we were able to integrate with various other tools, and it's 4 years now, and the practice is so seamless. We have it integrated with their knowledge management tools. We have them integrated with their reporting tools. So it's just like, part of their standard architecture practice.
Thank you very much. It's good to see that there's so many success stories. I've got a question here from, I think it's Marja. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. And they've asked about, what about version control? So would you be able to perhaps talk about, can you achieve version control using this architecture platform?
Yes, absolutely. So, there's a lot of focus on version control as well. So, when we say version control on an outset, people usually, think of an external version control system like a SVN or a Git or something like that. But at least in the recent versions of Enterprise Architect, what we really see is, there is two things in EA that really helps us manage and maintain versions internally. And one of the things is reusable asset service, and the other one is the much popular baselines. And with 15.1, there's a big enhancement that came, which I really liked, and I made a video for all the clients that I'm working with on how to use this RAS and baselines using the 15.1 capability to use the cloud environment to have these baselines, which kind of helps us have versions of your models and to also compare and contrast and merge it back. So this is without an external version control system. You can still use your EA's tools like baselines and RAS to manage your versions. I'm happy to share this video as well. So this is not with an audio. I just put it together for a few of our users who really wanted to understand this. But what we can do is, so it's just, you could go back to a version, compare it, merge it, and get it back. So this is just an example to show how I'm able to have a current version, and I'm going back and trying to compare it with the previous version of my diagram, and I can merge it at a diagram level or at a model level. So there are several things in EA that can be used to establish a version control system, but we just have to take the right approach to start with. So, people usually jump on an SVN or something and do it. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but we just have to understand what's exactly your requirement and then establish the versioning accordingly.
So when we publish this on the Sparx Systems YouTube site, what we can do is we can include links to a lot of those videos that show you some of those features. And speaking of Enterprise Architect, we've recently released build 1553. So the latest beta of Enterprise Architect 15.2, which has a range of new features around mathematical simulation and a number of different capabilities. And it of course builds on some of the work on 15.1 there with version control and a number of other features. So I'd encourage registered users to go to the Sparx Systems website and download the beta and check that out, because there's lots of great features there. So I'm just conscious of the time, Nizam, so what I might do is I might just get you to bring up your contact details again. So if anybody would like to get in touch, please send an email to prolaborate@sparxsystems.com or visit prolaborate.sparxsystems.com and visit the website and reach out. I am sure the team would be happy to help out and provide demos of Prolaborate and
Even the entire
give you the
platform.
assistance you require. So I'll just let you wrap up with any final comments, and thank you very much. It's been an amazing presentation and demo, and I think it's amazing that you've got enterprise architect at the heart of all of the modeling, but with just 1 or 2 clicks you can integrate with so many tools and just be able to visualize strategy and requirements and architecture and systems just with ease. So it's been great to be able to see it in such a
Yep. Thanks, Gordon. That
short
was
presentation.
Thank you. And that was the idea for this presentation, because following our previous webinar where I quickly touched on this platform, there was quite a few queries that came our way asking, what do you really mean by a platform? Because most people are aware of EA as a thick client application that is working from a desktop. But this has really changed in the last couple of years with the advent of Pro Cloud Server, and then following that the Prolaborate. And now this is a much holistic platform that can fit right into your enterprise tools landscape, and you can have a seamless way to communicate between other tools and have a consolidated view. So that's really what we wanted to show in this webinar. And I really appreciate your time, and also thanks everyone for joining this, and hope you found it useful.
It's been fantastic, and I just wish everyone well. Remember to wash your hands, stay safe, and look after one another. It's been great to have you all online, and look forward to seeing you at future webinars. And I'd like to thank you all for your time, and thanks Nizam for the excellent presentation. Take care, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Scott.